Jewel Lotus destroy Commander, next on Commander Replay. Welcome back everyone, talking about Jewel Lotus today. A lot of people are having a lot of reactions to it, so I thought I would weigh in on it, but more so, I want to talk about fast mana in general. But first, I'm just going to rapid fire my thoughts on Jewel Lotus. 1, it's not as good as Mana Crypt, Sol Ring, or Mana Vault. 2, I don't think it should be emergency banned. Once it's been in play for like 6 months, sure, take a look at it. If it's creating bad game states, ban it if you need to. But I don't think it warrants a ban before seeing play. 3, I don't think it goes in every deck. I play a lot of aggressive commanders, and this isn't necessarily what I want. I want mana production that's smooth and consistent throughout the game. I really like my Thran Dynamos, my Dowsing Daggers, my Sword of the Animus type stuff. That gives me consistent mana throughout the game. Now, there are times for burst mana. Mana Geyser is a card that I like, but that gets you like 20 mana, not 3 mana, that you can only use on your commander. The commanders that I do think will benefit a lot from Jewel Lotus will be your value-based commanders. Any commander that says draw a card on it, I think is a little bit scary. If you want to think about like Chulane or Joyra, those are a little bit scary and not things you want to be seeing on turn 1 or turn 2. And the other thing that does have me a little bit nervous is Planeswalker commanders, because Planeswalker commanders are hard to remove. If you drop a creature into play on turn 1 or turn 2, you have swords, you have path, plenty of removal in black and other colors to be able to deal with it on like 1 or 2 mana, typically. When a Planeswalker comes into play, most of the monocolor removal for a Planeswalker starts at 3 mana. There are some multicolor spells like Despark and Assassin's Trophy that will get rid of a Planeswalker on 2 mana, but in general, you're probably talking about 3 mana or more to get a Planeswalker out of play. And if a Planeswalker comes in on turn 1, that's actually really scary, because if that player's on the play, then you might be staring down an ultimate just by the time you can actually cast a Beast Within. And that's not a play pattern that I love, and I think that brings me to the point that I really want to talk about is, what does fast mana do? Obviously, fast mana, it makes more mana for you early in the game. And time and time again, we've seen that fast mana causes problems in 1v1 formats. And 2, those cards are generally very expensive in Commander. Chrome Mox is $40, Mox Diamond is like $600 now. Mana Crypt has been between like $100 and $200 depending on what point of time you're looking at. More mana early is a very powerful thing. But what does it actually mean in the scope of Commander? I think one of the best ways to get a feel for this is, I've played Magic Online for years, and on Magic Online, it's super common for you to write casual in the comments, and someone shows up with their Tymna and Thrasios CEDH deck, and then you just get stomped. But when you actually break down the mechanics of what's going on, the thing that you see is that, obviously the CEDH deck has a ton of fast mana in it, and if you're playing a casual deck, it probably doesn't. And what I've realized is that fast mana does 2 things. It reduces the amount of time and the amount of cards that you have to interact with a given strategy. So let's say you go Jewel Lotus into like Daretti, some Planeswalker commander. Daretti's into play on turn 1. Daretti's going to start using their plus mode and probably trying to work toward their ultimate. Meanwhile, you're just sitting back playing lands. What this means is, the amount of mana you have to deal with that Daretti is significantly less than if Daretti had not come down for 2 or 3 more turns. Like I mentioned earlier, a lot of Planeswalker removal starts at 3 mana. So that being the case, they're going to get a couple turns before anyone has any chance to be able to deal with this Daretti. And 2, because it's coming down much earlier than it would have otherwise, each player has also drawn less cards to be able to deal with a Daretti. And I guess the third thing, it also kind of ties into time a little bit, is each player has less untap steps to be able to deal with that Daretti. So not only the number of lands that you can play, but also the number of times that you untap your lands are both elements of time. And then of course you don't have your draw steps, and because you have less time, you probably haven't been able to play as many card draw cards to be able to find something that gets this Planeswalker out of play. So in a really simplistic sense, that's what fast mana does. It removes time and cards for your opponents to be able to interact with the strategy that you're doing. Unless, of course, you counter with your own fast mana, and now you might be on similar mana, now you just need the card to be able to get rid of the thing. And in a more general sense, what ends up happening is, the player with the fast mana gets really far ahead, now everyone else at the table is trying to chase them down and either get their commander out of play, or just get them under control in some way, shape, or form. and not be terribly behind themselves. And that's the main issue. So in CEDH, where everyone's playing fast mana, it's fine because everyone's playing fast mana. What makes it interesting is that everyone has it. When you play a game where one player has fast mana and the other three don't, those games get lopsided really quickly. And then it's a question of who brought cheap and efficient removal, and if the answer is no one, then the game is often over. And really, I do think it all comes back to play patterns. Is that a play pattern that people enjoy? For me personally, no, it's not. I get really stressed out when I see a player across the table dropping Soul Rings and Mana Crypts early. I'm not going to be any happier if they go Jeweled Lotus into their 4-mana commander on turn 1, especially if it's a value-based commander. So I know that commander means something different to everyone, but if you want to define commander as a fun and interactive format, which is how many people try to define it, then fast mana actually does the exact opposite of that. Fast mana makes it a non-interactive format because you're removing the ability for your opponents to interact, again, by reducing the amount of time, mana, and cards that they have available to be able to interact with whatever you're doing. So if you personally define Commander as quote-unquote fun and interactive, and especially in the more casual sense, then I don't think you should be trying to load up on fast mana in your deck, because all that speed can kind of cancel out the interactive part of the game. The game can become very non-interactive until you get to CEDH, where everyone has fast mana, and everyone has cheap interaction. So I guess a better way to look at it is, if your playgroup is running a lot of fast mana, then it probably makes sense for you to be doing that too. But if they're not running fast mana, I wouldn't run out the door to try and shove Jeweled Lotus in my deck. Because I think it's going to lead to that play pattern of, oh, you're ahead on turn 1, now you're the arch enemy, and now everyone's trying to chase you down. And it might feel bad for you when you have like 6 removal spells fired at you, but it's also going to feel bad for your opponents when they're just like under this duress all game of like, crap, we got to chase down this player who's like 4 turns ahead of us now. So anyway, overall, I'm not in love with the design of Jeweled Lotus because of the play patterns that it entices, which is try to get your commander into play on turn 1. That's not a thing that I care for. I don't like feeling behind on turn 2 of a game. That's not a feeling that I like. And I think Jeweled Lotus is a card that promotes that play pattern. But again, it's not the most offensive piece of fast mana out there. I watched Pleasant Kenobi's video on Jeweled Lotus, and he had some great points in his video. One of them that I'll hit on is that he was talking about his Tatiova deck, and he said that Gaia's Cradle is way stronger than Jeweled Lotus, and that is absolutely true. Gaia's Cradle is an insane magic card. So I really like that example that he gave. Jeweled Lotus isn't Gaia's Cradle good. So is Jeweled Lotus an auto-include in every deck? No, I don't think so. I don't think it should be emergency banned, but you probably will lose a game to Jeweled Lotus every once in a while. It's just a thing that's going to happen. Every once in a while, someone's going to get it in their opener, they're going to get their commander in, and no one's going to be able to answer it in time before the value takes over, and you have a non-game. And I hate non-games. The way that I build my decks right now is generally to avoid non-games. That's why I run a lot of ramp, that's why I run a lot of removal, because I know that I need to do those things in order to prevent non-games from happening. And yeah, it'll be super frustrating when that happens, so, so just be aware of that, especially for like newer players. Keep in mind that it's not necessarily the commander that got you, it's the fact that they had a bunch of fast mana that got their commander into play really quickly, at which point the commander's almost irrelevant. It's just a matter of having something on turn 1 is really good. So anyway, I don't want to go too long on this video. I just wanted to share my thoughts on how I perceive fast mana in Commander. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. As always, feel free to comment, like, or subscribe. Thank you for watching.